Hi guys, this week I am actually just doing a story for you. I thought it would be lovely to do a Yule story and something that you can listen to without having to watch. I needed to do something for you and I didn't know quite what this week, so this is what I've done. I hope you really do sit and listen, for within the story is a message, and that message will be abundantly clear. I will see you in 2025 because I will probably have next week off, being people coming and festivities and stuff like that. So see you in the new year and let's get into the story. In the heart of winter, when the frost and the ice and the snow drifted upon the roofs of the little village of Seidr, where the people over the last year or so had come to the understanding that things were not quite right with their village. The crops were soured and things were not good. The feast this year would not be very good, as they didn't have a lot acquired from the harvest. People were miserable and they didn't understand what to do. Of course, the priests of Woden were saying everything will be fine, and as such just carry on as normal. No thought was given to appeasing the gods. No thought was given to assessing what they may have done wrong. Thane Oswald, the lord of the village, decided to go against what had been told him via the priests. So he went against this, and he found a woman who was outside of the village because of the fear of her. And so they decided to evade her, for they didn't understand what it was she did. All they knew was that she was lonesome, and she walked the wooded areas with a cloak with many symbols on and a staff in her hand that seemed to sway with the wind. And people, and the children especially, were extremely scared of her. But Thane decided, in his great wisdom, to make contact with her through people that knew how to get in touch and invite her to the village for this Yule feast. He hadn't told anybody, and so they were decorating this big hall and they were putting all the evergreens up. But the people were going out into the woods and they were cutting things down, and they were making not an offering for them. They wasn't asking nature for this. They was just chopping away. In fact, that year they had cut down many trees to build things without asking. Now, the priests of Woden should have known better, and they should have done something to appease the nature spirits. They should have done something to honour the gods, but they didn't. In fact, they had become very lazy in what they were supposed to be doing. They had stopped going from home to home to aid in births and deaths. They had stopped doing rituals during the year, and people had become lazy, and they were not interested in even thinking about the gods. Yet they were celebrating Yule, but obviously for other reasons, for the hope of a better harvest next year, for the hope that things would get better. And so they had become lawless, and they had become apathetic, and they had been greedy and not good to each other, and there was no bonding in the village. And of course, Thane Oswald, he understood what was going on. He was a very spiritual leader, and he wanted to bring the village back to what it should be. And so they were decorating the big hall, and the food that they did have was put along the long table, and they were all getting ready in their best clothes to come to the Yule feast. A huge boar sat upon the table, and they did kill some of the animals that were supposed to be stored for the following year, but they did it and just hoped for the best. When the door of the great hall started to creak open, and a woman appeared with a staff and a long robe and a cloak of dark green with golden runes etched upon it, with a crown upon her head of fur, and of the fur-lined boots. Her staff seemed to get bigger as she walked towards them. Well, Thane Oswald stood up and he said, "Welcome, Fradies, welcome, welcome, you are welcome." And all the other people, they all shut up and they all sat there aghast, looking at this woman that she'd walked into their place, the thing that they'd all feared. She looked around the room and she went, "What have you been doing to make the gods so angry? What have you been doing to each other that makes the nature spirits unhappy? For you are bringing this upon yourselves. There are things that need to be done and you have very short time to do it in. But if you want my help, then you have to do what I tell you. The gods are telling me that you have been disrespectful. You have taken from the land and not given anything back. You have spited each other in greed and gluttony, so none of the goods that you could have had are available. Your children have gone without, and your elderly have died in a pitiful state. The village will not survive another year if you do not heed my warning." She then got her bag of runes and she threw them onto the table, and she pointed out the ones and said, "The gods have spoken. I want 5 of you to follow me to the edge of the woods, away from the village, and I want you to come willingly." Well, they were all like, "What's going to happen? She's not going to kill us, is she?" Thane was laughing. "Oh, you are so silly. Why are you so afeard of this wonderful person that's come to aid us in this village? You should be ashamed of yourselves." And so they followed and they went to the edge. She then turned around to them and said, "Look at the big oak tree. Stand by it. Put your hands upon the bark and then close your eyes," which they did. One of them suddenly said, "Oh, oh," and the next one went, "Oh," and then the others went, "Oh my goodness." And she said, "Now you know. Now you know." And with that, they walked back to the village. Stunned into silence, they did not speak, for the message came through the tree into them, what was needed. And they heard it and they knew it. And so they went back to the great hall and they said, "Stop eating, leave the food, go get your lithe, go get your drum, the best singers to waltz sing, and the children to help bake a loaf of bread so it's still warm. We will then go to the great oak tree and we will celebrate with the tree. We will give thanks and homage. We will give offerings. We will use a small bit of our blood, the ones that are the leaders of this village." So that would be Thane Oswald, the priest of Woden, and 1 child, 1 woman, depicting all that would be in the village. And it will not be harsh, it will be a small cut on your finger. We will put the blood upon the tree as the singing goes on and as the bread is offered. And with that, they all walked with torches to the great oak tree, because it is now dark. There were a few mumbles in the crowd about, "Oh, I'm hungry, I want to eat." And the mothers go, "Shh, be quiet. We are having to do this because it is wrong what we've been doing. You need to get some discipline because you have run amok for the last year, you children. Now's the time. We have to do different." And they went to the huge oak tree, and the villagers knelt on the floor and looked at the oak tree with gratitude but also sorrow for what they had done. The singers started to waltzing. Torches that they had was put around the tree to make a big circle of flame, and the bread was put upon the bark of the tree, still warm. And then came the blood offering of the people, and they did that willingly. They were actually happy to be doing such. The wonderful Seidr practitioner, Freydis, walked through them and put her hand upon the tree and smiled and held her staff to the tree and said, "Thank you." And she turned round to everyone and said, "Well, you have done well, and they are appeased. The gods are now appeased. Everyone is appeased. You have to keep this pact once a year. Every Yule you must come and do the same thing. But you must also be respectful for all the year. If you take from the wood, give something back. If you take from the animals, make sure there will be an abundance from them and look after them, make them happy. Your villagers need respect. They need to be taught discipline. Help them to learn, to teach their young ones for the future. And you will get an abundance next year. I am being told you will all get children and you will all get abundance in your harvest, and people that are ill will become well." And so they rejoiced back at the great hall and feasted on what food was there. Thane Oswald said to Freydis, "Would you like to stay and have something to eat?" She looked at him with her ice blue eyes and said, "Thank you, Thane, but no, I have other villages I need to go and aid now." And off she went. They see her walking in the distance, and everybody was so grateful and understanding. Now we go forwards to 2024. Centuries passed, and the tale of Freydis and the story that went with it was abundant in that village, which was now called Castwick. And all the people that lived there, as it was still quite a small town now, not a village, had a lot of ancestral connection, the families. So they were the children of the children of the children. And the old oak tree still stood there. Instead of the torches, there was a big bonfire, and the families would sit chatting merrily amongst themselves around the bonfire. Each had baked a small loaf of bread, but in shapes of stars and the moon and all the things that they felt was on their heart, and they were laid around the bonfire to keep them warm. Carols, pagan carols, were sung still because this village kept its traditions, and even though these days people are not religious, they didn't know that they was actually doing the pagan thing or the heathen thing. And so they would go one by one in families to the oak tree, take their piece of bread and lay it on the foundation, and take a glass of water or wine, depending on who they were, and they would throw it upon the tree. And that would be instead of the blood, obviously. In this day and age, people didn't think about things like that. They would also take their stock of animals, like just one out of their animals, like one lamb or one cow or whatever, and they would just take them to be blessed by the tree for abundance next year. The kids would get around the bonfire and sing these songs. Amongst them was a young girl who was affected by this in a big way. She had kept her thoughts to herself about how she felt, but in her quiet times she connected with spirit and knew Freydis. And Freydis had said to her, "You are a Seidr practitioner, though you do not know yet. If you are willing, you can do this and aid your village." That night nobody knew, but she made a pact on her own to help the village and be what Freydis told her she would be. And so she went up to the tree and she made an offering of her blood. Guys, nobody knew. She just made a little cut on her finger and she put it upon the tree. The tree seemed to sway with the wind as if it was happy to have another Seidr practitioner in its midst. And with that, she then spoke. Normally, she was the quiet one that never really did much, the little mouse that sat in the corner. But this night, she suddenly felt very powerful. She picked a stick up from the floor, and it was a nice branch. And it was her beginning of her practice. She stood with this stick and tapped the floor and told them all, "This is just one of the many things we are going to do as a village. We feel the joy that's coming from the tree. We need to go to our roots to aid the village or the town. We need to make us stronger and our children to be able to go on and on and on. And I would like to set up the group. I would like to be the one to help you all." They all cheered because it was wonderful. The energy was so alive and filled with joy that they thought about it and they said, "Yes, we would like you to do so." She said, "Okay, this branch, this stick is going to be decorated and made into our symbol." And with that, they all cheered and agreed. They all then went back to the great old hall, which was now a historic site, but was opened up one time of the year for a feast. And they sat in the seats. The person that belonged to the family of Thane Oswald also had the name Ozzy, he was called, but his real name was Oswald, which was a very unusual name for these days. But his parents were very into historic stuff. So here was that. So somebody said, "Hey, why don't we call him Thane Oswald, just like the original people of this village, this now town, because it has grown." And everybody cheered and laughed and had a drink, said, "Let's toast Thane Oswald and let's toast the young lady." And guess what? Her name was Freda. Not Freydis, but Freda, which is also a very unusual name for England. But there you go. Mysteries always come to small villages, and wonderful, wonderful rituals and things from the past can bring a village or a town together in oneness. And so they celebrated around the great table in the great hall. They felt so much joy, and all the spirits from that time were with them in their hearts. And they also joined in. They then did an offering in symbolism to Woden. by the tree, the ones that believed in that had done it in secret, they decided to show their strength of who they were, and they took the little statue of Woden and put it by the tree, and they gave an offering. And people were happy about it. They weren't upset or worried, because now they understood the seriousness of be able to go back to your roots, to go back to your ancestors, and to learn from them, and to walk forwards for a future which is going to be wonderful for them. More prosperity, more births, food, crops, great, and all because you learn to live with nature and the animals, and you learn to respect the gods and your ancestors. I really do hope you have a wonderful Yule, and for those that celebrate Christmas, enjoy that as well. And I wish for you, from Freya and the gods, abundance in all you want, and joy and health for the following year. So with that, I'm going to leave it. So have a great time, guys, wherever you are, whatever time of day, night or evening it may be. I wish you the best ever. House of a Lang.